In this lesson, I want to introduce an important piece of syntax in JSX, and that is the curly braces. So right here in between the opening and closing anchor tags, I'm going to remove my former text, and I'm going to write a pair of opening and closing curly braces. Now in VS Code, as soon as you write your opening one, it's probable that your editor will automatically auto-complete the closing curly brace because it knows it's working with JSX. But if it doesn't, you can feel free to close it off. So what purpose does this curly brace serve? Inside the curly brace, we are welcome to use any valid JavaScript code that we want, any valid JavaScript expression. And the beautiful part of that is we are able to do that right in between the regular markup, right in between the rest of the JSX that looks like regular HTML code. An important thing to note in this scenario is whatever we put in the curly braces will ultimately be output to the screen, okay? So here's an example of a very simple way that this can prove advantageous. In JavaScript, unlike HTML, we are able to do addition and multiplication. We are able to do mathematical operations. So in here, we can write any valid JavaScript code. So in JavaScript, an expression like 1 + 1 is totally valid. So the way this will work in JSX is this code is going to evaluate first, and then its final evaluation will be output right here. So JavaScript will add these two numbers. It's going to get 2, and thus the text for the hyperlink will be 2 in the middle of our screen. All right, so this is kind of a contrived and simple example, but it serves to demonstrate the point that within these curly braces, we kind of have an escape hatch from the HTML-like syntax above here. We can write any valid JavaScript code that we want in here and use it to build our dynamic JSX right here. So here's an example of something you might see that's actually a little bit more real world. Let's say I have a constant within my MyLink component function component. I'm just going to call that constant text. And I'm going to give it the text of go to Wikipedia. Let's say I wanted this text, this string represented by my text constant to be the output value right here. I want that to be the display text for the hyperlink. Well, the problem is text by itself is not going to work because if we were to do this, then we'd simply see the actual characters text in our browser when we rendered this component, right? It would be the exact same thing if we did 1 + 1 here. We would not see 2 output in our actual UI. We would see the actual characters 1 + 1. So text by itself will not work, and we need to tell JSX and React that we're trying to be dynamic here, that we want text to actually reference this constant right here, and ultimately its own stored value of go to Wikipedia. So as soon as we wrap this in curly braces, remember it becomes basically a valid JavaScript expression. So what does the JavaScript expression of text evaluate to? It's this constant, which references this string. So if we were to see this app in our browser, this anchor tag would have the text go to Wikipedia. So now we are dynamically injecting little chunks of JavaScript logic, JavaScript constants right in line and using that to build our UI dynamically, right? So here's another example just to show you how flexible this syntax is. Let's say I change this text. I'm going to change the constant to be Wikipedia. And here on the right-hand side, instead of a string, I'm going to change this to be an object with a text property. So right here, I'll have an object with a text property. And let's say I once again want to reference go to Wikipedia as my text right here for the hyperlink. Well, within my curly braces, we can just use regular JavaScript syntax. I first need to reference my object, which is referenced by the Wikipedia constant. That is the whole object, and that is not what we want to output. We want to output the string represented by the text property. So right here, we just use regular dot syntax, and this will reference the text property and evaluate to this string right here. So ultimately, what we'll print in the browser is a hyperlink that goes to Wikipedia that has the text go to Wikipedia on screen. So any valid JavaScript expression we can do in our JSX as long as it is wrapped in curly braces. All right, just one more example for you, just to show you some examples of how this might work. Here, let's say I have an array. I'm just going to declare it and call it text. And my array will have one element, and it will be the same string of go to Wikipedia. So we started with a string, we moved to an object, now we have an array of strings. Well, the way I can reference that element is by using regular JavaScript syntax, once again within curly braces. So right here, text is my array. I don't want to output the whole array. I just want the first element, so I can index into position 0. And this is totally valid syntax. Once again, this will evaluate first, and then the final evaluation is what's actually going to be printed to the screen, in which case it's going to be the string go to Wikipedia. All right, so to close this lesson off, let's return back to our original example just so we can pick back up with it in the next lesson. So right here, I'm just going to change this back to being a regular string assigned to a text constant, and that's going to be go to Wikipedia. And right here, I'm going to change this to text. But the key takeaway from this lesson is in order to inject any kind of dynamic content or dynamic reference or any kind of JavaScript logic, any kind of JavaScript evaluation or expression, the syntax for that is simply a pair of curly braces, and then within those curly braces, we put that thing that we want to evaluate dynamically. Okay? And we are, of course, not limited to just one pair of curly braces. We can have as many as we want in our JSX. So if we did this, of course, we would see our text appear twice in a row, go to Wikipedia, followed by go to Wikipedia. And we're just getting started here as far as discovering the functionality that this enables. For example, later in the course, we're going to see how we can take an array of elements and iterate over that array with the map method and use that to generate an array of JSX and then render all of that to the screen. The key takeaway here is we are harnessing the power of, once again, the programming capacity of JavaScript to be able to build up these dynamic reactive interfaces. Now we're starting to see some of that unfold as we're able to inject dynamic content via the form of constants or any kind of JavaScript evaluation, objects, arrays. We're able to inject that directly into our content and use regular JavaScript constructs before we do. All right, so curly braces for that kind of evaluation or expression, any kind of JavaScript code that you want to run in the middle of your JSX markup. All right, that's all there is to cover in this lesson, and I will see you in the next one.